Hey everyone, so today I am going to show you guys how I add sleeves to my bodice. This is a little bit trickier, but it gives a really nice finish in the inside. So first of all, I have my main pieces already cut out, and I go ahead and I stitch them at the shoulder. That's step one. The next step is attaching the sleeves. Now I've gone ahead and I've clipped them on, but when you go to baste them on, you are going to leave a 1-inch opening in the front, sew a little bit, stop, and leave a 1-inch opening in the back. So once again, this is really important because in the last step, we are going to close this 1-inch opening. When we stitch the sleeve onto the armhole, we are going to leave a 1-inch opening on both sides and just stitch across the green area. All right, so I've done that. There's my 1-inch opening on that side. There is another one on the other side, and I've just stitched along the armhole. And this is what it should look like. Now in this, I put the main fabric and the lining right sides facing together, and all I am doing is clipping the armholes together of my main fabric and my lining together with clips. I am not stitching right now. I am just kind of putting them, setting them together with these clips, making sure they line up properly before I sew. We are still leaving a 1-inch opening in that armhole in the front and the back still. And the sleeves are pushed forward towards the collar because we are going to do this next. We are going to roll it as thinly and tightly as we can into that little area right there in the shoulder, and we are going to clip it. So when we stitch, we are going to have that sleeve rolled in that little area. So it's really important that you fold that sleeve as neatly and tightly as you can, because it can and will probably get caught when you are sewing the collar or the armhole. So once again, that sleeve just gets taquitoed and rolled into that shoulder area as tightly and neatly as you can between the main fabric and the lining after you've clipped the armhole, and you go ahead and you clip the collar all the way around because you will be stitching that close next. Always line up your shoulder seams too for a nicer finish. All right, so when I stitch, I'm still going to leave that 1 inch in the front and the back of that armhole, but I'm going to stitch all the way around, which I have done right here. I've left that 1-inch opening in the front and the back, but I stitched around the collar and on the armholes and in the back area where my buttons are going to go. There's that 1-inch opening. I am going to now take it out. And the reason why I am going to take it out is because I made a mistake when I was stitching and I caught some of that fabric. That sleeve fabric, can you tell right there? I clipped it. So now that I've checked, I am going to make sure I fix that. I'm going to turn it right back, and I'm going to stitch that, unstitch and restitch, and just fix these problems. And that's what happens sometimes when you have that sleeve. That's why it's so important that you roll it in really tight. So I fixed those problems, and now I'm just clipping all of the curves of my collar and my armhole, making sure not to cut any of my stitches. And I have these little clippers that I bought at Joann's. I absolutely love them. They work perfectly for this purpose. All right, so I am ready to iron it. I just want to give it a nice finish when I lay it out and I do my next step. I also noticed I didn't clip that corner, so I'm going to go ahead and go right back in and clip that corner. All right, so I have gone ahead and I didn't show it, but I ironed the entire lining onto my main fabric just so it looks nice and neat, and I am ready to move on to the next step. So this is what it should look like, all nice and neat. And now we are getting ready to sew the side or the sleeves. So the sleeves, we are finally going to close the sleeve length. We are still not closing that armhole. That 1 inch is still going to stay there. We're just going to stitch right there all the way across. We are not going to close that 1-inch opening yet. So I have gone ahead and I sewed along the length of the sleeve. I am not closing that 1 inch, and I did that on both sides. So now I'm ready to sew my main fabric, the sides, and just by lifting that lining, I can go ahead and I can stitch that closed. And it is really important that you have the right seam allowance at this point, because you need that in order to close your armhole at the end of this. So I've gone ahead. We're going to push that sleeve through at the end. That's why we need that 1-inch opening still. I've gone ahead and I've stitched my sides of my main and my lining, and I realized that I had one side right and one side wrong. It should end up looking with the 2 wrong sides facings and right sides facing out of that lining. So what I should have done was I should have taken my lining, pulled it, and then stitched along there so I had both wrong sides facing. So now we are finally at the step of the armhole. We're finally going to close those 1-inch openings. We are going to kind of flatten right there the seam, and I found out it doesn't matter which direction the sleeve is going. It just kind of comes together, and you are going to just sew that close, that what is now a 2-inch opening, because the front and the back, you can go ahead and see it just comes together, and you're just going to stitch that opening close. So you're finishing off the armhole at this point, making sure you are going to flatten that so it's not bulky right at the armpit. Clip it on, sew it close, and that is the final step in all of this. When you are done, you can go ahead, you can clean up any threads that you have, turn it right side out. This is what it should look like. See that the 1-inch opening in the front and the back is now closed. I didn't finish my sleeves because I'm waiting for my daughter to grow into it so that I can figure out what the length is going to be. Cut all of your excess threads, but look how nice the lining is on the inside. See what a nice finish this method does? I know it takes a little bit longer and there's a few extra steps. You want to make sure that you cut off any of those threads. And this is what the back looks like, the front looks like. I'm going to turn it right or wrong side out so you guys can see the lining again. It's just beautiful. It is such a nice finish and totally worth all those steps.